Hello, everyone. So I will present our research in Wayar Machok program. For several years, I have been presenting here findings from our research on the program. The research I'm conducting through the Bruckner Center of Autism Research in Ariel University under the supervision of Professor Esther Ben-Yitzhak. And today I will share findings from a longitudinal study examining adaptive behavior and social communication skills among autistic soldiers recruited to the IDF through the Roim Rachok program. These findings will be compared with those of their peers, soldiers with typical development. So the Roim Rachok program was founded with a clear vision in 2013 to provide young autistic adults the opportunity to develop their skills and contribute meaningfully to themselves, to society, and to the country. This is achieved through military service in the IDF and later integration into the workforce, focusing on high-demand vocational fields that align with the strength of autistic individuals. All of this takes place within a structured, professional, and highly supportive framework led by dedicated expert, speech and language pathologists like myself, occupational therapists, and psychotherapists. At the core of the program is a win-win approach. The military benefits from highly skilled and motivated soldiers, while the soldiers gain a meaningful and empowering service experience. The program follows a structured 5-stage process. It begins with an initial screening, followed by a pre-military professional training course and a trial period within the IDF unit. Only after successfully completing this process, and if the participant is found suitable and actively chooses to continue, they proceed with enlistment. So, regarding to what Professor Gal Meiri said at the early lecture, for several years it's happening. Autistic young adults are recruited to military service. And here you see one of the recruitment. The soldiers enlist as volunteers in periods of 1 year, another year, and 8 months. This is full recruitment service, full service. Each year, the continuous service is based on mutual agreement, where the soldier wishes to continue and the commander approves their ongoing role. The training course takes place in a civilian facility and lasts 3 months, during which a group of trainees learn the military profession. The course simulates a military environment and aims to prepare participants for the IDF on the professional, functional, communicative, and emotional level. A broad team of professionals from the program, alongside with commanders from the units, accompany the course. Military service, however, is characterized by the distribution of soldiers across different units, with only small groups serving together. Each unit is supported by a designed professional, providing guidance to both commanders and soldiers. This study focuses on key functional domains essential for workforce integration, adaptive behavior, and social communication. Organizations highly value adaptive skills due to their significant impact on both individual and team productivity. Although many autistic adults have intact language and cognitive abilities, they often face challenges in achieving the level of self-sufficiency required for maintaining employment and independent living. At the same time, workplace communication plays a crucial role in job satisfaction, yet remains a significant challenge for autistic employees, since communication differences are a key factor in autism diagnosis. In the IDF, as in many workplaces, work interactions involve both formal and informal communication, requiring synchronization and adaptability. Research highlights that communication gaps are one of the biggest barriers to long-term employment among autistic population. Recognizing these challenges, the Roim Rachok program places a strong emphasis on functional intervention designed to enhance both adaptive behavior and social skills. Recently, we published our findings from the training course phase. Analysis revealed that participants reported enhanced adaptive behavior and emotional connections, and improved social communication skills following the course. Consistent improvement were observed across the diverse vocational fields, and initial autism level did not predict the changes. In this presentation, I will present findings on changes in adaptive behavior and social communication from the beginning of the course to the end of 2 years of military service among the program participants. Additionally, we will examine the functioning of soldiers who are not on the spectrum in these areas over time, as they represent the general population with whom Roim Rachok soldiers integrate. In some ways, their profile is in these areas provides insight into the functional and communicative demands of the workplace. The purpose of this comparison is to gain a clearer understanding, which will help refine and optimize the intervention and support provided to both autistic soldiers and their surrounding environment. In the IDF, everything comes in threes, so naturally we had three hypotheses. We hypothesized that group status would serve as a predictor for adaptive behavior, and empathy scores would predict social adaptive behavior among ASD participants. We also thought that regarding group differences, non-autistic soldiers would exhibit higher communication skills and adaptive behavior scores compared to autistic participants. And regarding changes over time, we expected that autistic participants would improve aspects of adaptive behavior and communication skills through 2 years of supported service, whereas non-autistic soldiers would maintain a stable pattern of function. We had 87 soldiers who participated in the longitudinal studies. All participants went through the IDF screening process. The groups were matched by age, sex, and vocational field. They showed differences in SRS-2 total scores, secondary conditions, and in the WAIS-2 verbal vocabulary score, which was higher in the non-ASD group compared to the ASD group, and later was taken as a covariate. The study groups were provided with a comprehensive presentation outlining the study, including its objective, rationale, and were asked to provide signed informed consent if they wish to participate. It was clarified to participants from both groups that participation in the study was voluntary and that they could discontinue participation at any stage without consequences. The research was approved by the Ariel University Institutional Review Board and the IDF Research Ethics Board. This research included 4 time points. During the course phase, only the ASD group participated, as this phase is unique to the Roim Rachok program. However, once the autistic participants began their military service, data collection included both groups. The study was conducted during the COVID-19 pandemic, which had its impact on our research process. We quickly adapted to transitioning to online assessment tools. Regarding military service, Roim Rachok soldiers operated under the same conditions and regulation as their peers in the unit. Measures included the Adaptive Behavior Assessment System, which is a self-reported questionnaire measures everyday functioning across 3 domains: conceptual, social, and practical. For social communication assessment, we selected 3 measures to create the most comprehensive picture possible. The FOPA test that evaluates the ability to recognize and interpret social appropriate and inappropriate statements in various adult social situations. Empathy quotient, which is a self-reported questionnaire assessing both emotional empathy, which is feeling connected to others, and cognitive empathy, which means understanding others' emotions. And conversation task that was based on the Yael in vivo pragmatic protocol. It is a semi-structured short conversation analyzing pragmatic language skills that influence conversational coherence, such as maintaining the topic, asking relevant questions, and giving comments. So what we found? Between 2019 and 2020, 53 autistic participants began courses in the program. 3 did not complete the full training course, and 1 requested exclusion of their data. 48 Roim Rachok soldiers completed the first year of military service. One participant discontinued from service within the first year due to a lack of suitability for the military daily framework, and two other soldiers chose to withdraw from voluntarily service during the second year. Overall, about 90% of Roim Rachok participants served for 2 years in core professions. Regarding the first hypothesis, that group membership predicts adaptive behavior, let's focus on the conceptual subdomain on the ABAS 2. Here you see the hierarchical regression, and you see the two last steps, the third step and the fourth step. Hierarchical regression revealed that in the third step, group membership significantly correlated with the ABAS-2 conceptual score, meaning that being in the non-autistic group was associated with better conceptual adaptive skills. However, in the fourth step, when empathy factors introduced into the model, group membership was no longer a significant predictor for conceptual adaptive behavior. Instead, higher emotional empathy abilities, the EEQ, predicted better conceptual adaptive behavior. Further analysis revealed it affects only the autistic group and not the non-autistic group. Overall, the model explained 35% of the variance in the conceptual adaptive behavior. We observed this trend in both practical and social subdomains. Additionally, in the social domain was also predicted by cognitive empathy among the ASD group, as we assumed. So, contrary to our research hypothesis, when emotional empathy was added to the model, group membership no longer predicted adaptive behavior, but instead functioned as a moderator variable. Emotional empathy emerged as a key predictor for all three adaptive behavior subdomains within the autism group. This finding underscores the crucial role of emotional empathy in daily adaptive skills among autistic individuals. Enhancing emotional empathy through an inclusive social environment that fosters connection and belonging may be a pivotal factor in improving not only social, but also adaptability, independence, and self-sufficiency in this population. Moving to the second and third hypothesis, let's look at the change from T0 to T1. The arrow mark the significant changes, and you see the dot lines are the non-autistic groups, and the straight line is the autistic groups. So you see a significant increase in the conceptual, social, and practical adaptive behavior following the course. This is from T0 to T1. From T1 to T3, the ASD group maintained these improvements throughout their military service, demonstrating adaptive behavior within the normal range, though still significantly lower than the neurotypical peers in all three subdomains. Now let's look at the results in the social communication skills. Cognitive empathy showed no improvement following the course or during military service in both ASD and non-ASD groups. However, emotional empathy significantly increased after the course, reflecting stronger connections with peers and a greater sense of belonging. Like adaptive behavior, this increase remained stable over the following 2 years, as well as the difference between the two groups. In the FOPA task, we observed significant improvements after the course in participants' ability to identify and interpret social situations from adult life involving inappropriate remarks. Each line represents a different aspect or nuance in interpretation, and we saw a significant increase in all of them. It means that following the course, the ASD participants demonstrated more accurate and well-reasoned interpretations, explaining them in terms of intent and social context. This is from T0 to T1. During military service, this ability was maintained, and not only that, their performance reached the same level as non-autistic soldiers. In other words, both groups perceived inappropriate social situations with the same level of clarity. In contrast, where social neutral situations, such as small talk, were presented, No change in interpretation was observed following the course. Moreover, a significant difference emerged between the autistic group, who often interpret this situation as inappropriate, provoking negative emotions, and the non autistic group, who perceived them as neutral. This finding was particularly surprising as these situations are generally overlooked by society. However, it suggests that autistic individuals may interpret them differently, sometimes experiencing frustration or discomfort without others being aware of it. Conversation findings had the same trend: no change during the course nor military service, along with significant consistent difference between the groups. So, gathering all the data we see in social communication field, we see that finding in this field aligned with the double empathy theory, which suggests that social communication difficulties between autistic and non-autistic individuals arise at least in part because these two groups think differently. While people can easily understand those who think similar to them, they may struggle to compare those with different cognitive styles. This means that communication gaps are always present. Neurological differences associated with autism manifest in social communication patterns, which can impact workplace interactions, even for autistic individuals with typical cognitive abilities. Therefore, the recommendations for autistics are: use self advocacy to communicate your preferred communication styles to those around you, such as supervisor, employer, or teammate. If a social situation constantly leads to negative emotion, seek advice from a trusted non autistic individual who can offer alternative social interpretation and strategies. A therapist can also be a value research resource. And find a forum or a group where you feel comfortable and socially at ease. Recommendation for society: educate yourself about autism and understand the differences in social communication and interpretation of situation. Check in with autistic colleagues occasionally. Ask how they are doing and how they felt in recent workplace interactions, and communicate more explicitly than you used to. Clarify what you mean, what assumptions you made, and what expectations you had in a given situation. In conclusion, the training course, combining vocational training with extensive emotional, functional, and communication based support, serves as an intervention. Participants reported improved adaptive behavior, a stronger sense of belonging, and demonstrated better interpretation of social situation. These are specific areas that the course targets. In contrast, military service, even with support, represent real life, more complex and less structured than training environment. Support in this context is not a form of intervention. Notably, we did not have autistic soldiers serving in the same position without support, so we cannot draw a firm conclusion about its effectiveness. We did see, contrary to our hypothesis, that no increase of function is as we hypothesized. However, we can say there was no deterioration or loss of function, which we know is common in autistic individuals experiencing burnout in high productive work environment. Instead, we observed stability and parallel trajectory to that of non-autistic peers. The support in daily life may be contributed to the stability. That being said, I remain cautious with saying anything about burnout in this sample, since the study examined mostly functional areas and does not extend in broader emotional follow-up during military service, which is certainly needed. So, to conclude, I would like to highlight that approximately 90% of trainees who began the pre-military courses completed at least 2 years of military service as soldiers in core professions. This is particularly notable given that they serve as volunteers and have the option to leave at any time. Additionally, commanders can recommend early discharge if they feel that the process does not uphold with a win-win principle. So what does it mean? that we can sustain and live with a gap. It's possible. Thank you for your attention. Sincerely appreciation to all contributors and participants of this research. Thank you.